Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Justin Perkins. This is Talk Junkie. Wasn't sure how many more of these I was going to do, if I was going to do any more of them. If you listened to the last podcast, kind of self-explanatory. If you didn't, go back and listen to the last podcast. But we are going to do some more. It's just we're not going to do them about certain things. I am going to do a mailbag very soon. And I'm going to address the stuff, even the stuff I don't want to. We'll get that out of the way, and then we won't have to mess with it. I got a lot of dirty messages about not answering the mail and doing the mailbag. So if you want to be in the next upcoming mailbag, send your stuff. And it can be about whatever you think about the show or what I should do, whatever. Anything after that, that's a mailbag. I'm probably going to be a lot more selective about reading what it is. So if it's, who you voting for or something, there's tons of great podcasts out there. Find one. This is not a political podcast. It's not going to work. But a local musician. I live in Eastern Kentucky. I don't know. I noticed because of my little map that not everybody now listening is from Eastern Kentucky, if everyone is still listening. But I live in Eastern Kentucky, Knott County to be specific. A place I never was crazy about living, but in the times we're in now, I'm pretty happy to be in the middle of nowhere. But local music is a huge thing in Eastern Kentucky. It's not necessarily in the past, or really by any means, been the type of music that I'm into. But when it comes to country music and bluegrass music, in the past, Eastern Kentucky has been a force to be reckoned with. US 23 in that area to begin with. Virginia, that southwest part of Virginia, Pound, Clintwood in that area. You've got Ralph Stanley, you've got Loretta Lynn in Kentucky over in Butcher Holler. You have, I believe Billy Ray Cyrus is from up towards Ashland. Probably should have done some research on this. I'm not a big country fan, so it would have helped. I believe Dwight Yoakam, I can't remember the Skaggs, Ricky Skaggs. I think that's more on the bluegrass side. But so many members. So many musicians. But as of late, there's kind of been this resurgence in that type of music. And in this instance, it's a couple of people I can actually listen to. Not to knock those other forms of music. Ralph Stanley, I was always a metalhead growing up. Let me tell you, there's no darker lyrics in a Ralph Stanley lyric. And I don't know if he's responsible for all those or not, but check those out. But I'm not as well versed in country as I am in other forms of music, and I do like some country, mostly older country, and now some newer stuff. But from the little town I live in Knott County, there's a girl named Britt Taylor who's currently making some noise and making a lot of stuff. There was a group a couple years back, Halfway to Hazard. I want to say one of those guys is from Knott County. There was a group called Sunday's Best, I believe. I want to say they were from Floyd, Johnson County, maybe somewhere in that area. Chris Stapleton, obviously, is an Eastern Kentuckian. Not going to lie, I've heard 2 songs. Not my deal, don't know a lot about him, but he is huge and he is good and he is from Eastern Kentucky. That's what I've heard, and I know that he's huge. It's obvious in a lot of ways. But 2 gentlemen that I am familiar with, Tyler Childers and Sturgill Simpson, are both from here in Eastern Kentucky. One from Breathitt County, the other I'm not exactly sure. I've been told he's from West Virginia, told he's from Ashland. I was told he was from Floyd County. I know he's not from Floyd County, so I don't have a clue. Now, a lot of these people, I'm sure, my understanding from what I've seen from interviews with Sturgill Simpson, he actually moved out to Colorado, worked for the railroad, I believe. He was far away from Eastern Kentucky when he made a real run at being a musician, and my understanding is he went back to Nashville to make that run. Tyler Childers, I don't know. I don't know how that works. Same with Chris Stapleton. Britt Taylor, I used to train martial arts under her father. I remember her when she was little. A very talented young lady. I know just based on posts and stuff, a lot she lives in Nashville, and I assume she had to make that move from here to there. And I was in a local band in Eastern Kentucky, nothing huge by any means. And I know a lot of local musicians. A gentleman named Dustin Hoover, I believe, is one of the better local musicians we have. Just circumstances is not permitted for him to go to Nashville or go somewhere because, not everybody has the ability to do that. And when I was in high school, the only thing I wanted to do was drive to Louisville every weekend and see a local band called MSD play, and there were other bands in Christian Bible too. Sin, I know I've never seen this band, but I from just you hear stuff, in local scenes, and there was a group called, I believe, Cornbread Mafia that was big in that area at that time. And at that time, I was playing in a band down here in Eastern Kentucky. And there's obvious differences, and that's more on the metal and new metal side of things. But there's obvious differences with that, as well as there is with country music when you get into a different area. Down here at that time, as my good friend Donnie Baker would say, circus 1998. So we're looking from 95 to 2000, sometime in that area. If you live down here, and there was a punk scene apparently at that time that I don't know anything about, and there was a huge punk scene in Louisville at that time. But if you lived in Eastern Kentucky at that time, and you were in the type of band I were in, you may get a house party. We played a graduation party once, played in my buddy's basement, the guitar player, we played there a couple times, but nothing to really amount to anything. Now, there was your occasional battle of the bands, things of that nature. There was a local radio personality named Trevor Huff who had the Modern Rock Revival he held down here, and it was a couple local bands, including himself, and then I believe Sonic Joyride, a band that they paid to have come in. And it was probably one of the defining moments of why I wanted to be in a band. Not it didn't impact my love of music, that was already there, but to really want to be in a band and really want to perform in front of people probably came from watching that. Trevor went on, he had a band called Flat Mary Stone, and they went on to play away from here. I've seen a lot of videos of them playing in Moorhead and areas like that. I think Moorhead was a big town for a lot of these people. I believe they may have even played the Toy Tiger in Louisville. I'm not sure about that, but I want to say I've heard that or seen a video on YouTube. Not sure. But another gentleman I used to play music with started a band called Shoveltooth, and they kind of played that same circuit up towards Moorhead and places like that. I believe those two guys eventually got together at some point. But here in Eastern Kentucky, a battle of the bands, maybe a school show, like I said, maybe a party, a keg party, or a graduation party. Those were kind of your goals, and that was kind of, metal-wise, what you could do. Country-wise, or in that aspect, there were a lot of bars and a lot of stuff, and then you had Marlo Tackett's place. You had a lot of places that local bands that were more in that line, especially country, could go and play shows and get some exposure. Obviously, they weren't going to get exposure to the level, of playing in Nashville, but you could do some shows and stuff, and I can't speak intelligently about how much of an option was there for those people because I wasn't in that scene, and I don't know a lot about it. On the other hand, if we look at Louisville at that time, I don't remember what year Pandemonium closed, but you're looking at, let's say, 98 and back. You had a place called Pandemonium. It's like a arcade with a small little venue next door, and that was a free show every Friday and Saturday night. I was up there. I believe I went to some Sunday shows there. All kinds of local bands. I know it became a big punk place at one time, but a lot of metal, new metal, just spookcore type stuff. Just a lot of metal in those places. Then you had Tech World. I think it's $5 shows at Tech World, and it was, MSD and Sin and all these local bands would play there, but you also had bands like Hatebreed and things like that that would come through and come in there and play and do your $5-10 show at that time. You had LRS Fest, which was a radio station up there. They had the opportunity for local bands to play. You had a lot of in-store stuff, especially MSD, on past the early, into the early 2000s, things at the mall, Hot Topic, things like in-store stuff you could do there. Ear Ecstasy, a great local music store right up there on the Highlands in Louisville. They would do shows. Not only, I saw Code there when Code's first album had come out, so they would have bigger national bands. I want to say I seen something on YouTube the other day where Jason Isbell was there back before they closed the place. Years back, way before I'd ever heard of Jason Isbell. But local bands would play there too, and they would carry local merchandise. I seen a lot of outdoor shows. It's kind of, I don't know if they were guerrilla shows or what they were, but a lot of festivals and opportunities to play and things. And down here in Eastern Kentucky, you had the Gingerbread Festival, which, if you weren't country, it was hard, really, or Southern rock, it was really hard to get a spot there. They did do more of a heavier show one year, and again, I think that was 90% due to this gentleman that was on the radio down here and had the band, Trevor Huff. But that didn't last very long. Now, there were some other local festivals if you're from the area. Obviously, Awesome Days is very much music, or not Awesome Days, whatever Letcher County, Mountain Heritage. They're very music eccentric. When I was younger, like, it was a lot around that. But again, you were dealing with maybe a rock band at the heaviest, but definitely not metal, not the type of stuff I was into. Then you had Black Gold. That was probably your best bet to get a little heavier. But again, it's nothing that was prevalent that was going to happen a lot. Now, you had these local places in Louisville, all these opportunities for unsigned local bands to play. I went and seen Summer Sanitarium, Metallica, Korn, System of a Down. Unfortunately, Kid Rock was there. Powerman 5000, and James Hetfield was hurt and didn't show up. So but they made that up later. We'll talk about that some other time. But we went and seen Summer Sanitarium, and we were a little late getting there, and we would have been early if we had known that. My understanding, and this is all after the fact, is 3 local bands had won a contest or been chosen or whatever, and I don't remember the names of any of those of the third band, but one of the bands was MSD, and I believe the other band was Cornbread Mafia, who I still have yet to have seen. But these bands were given a platform to be at, it was an outside stage before you came in. It was a small thing outside, but, still, to play a show outside of a Metallica show, outside of a Korn show, it's an amazing opportunity. And this really is kind of what spurred me on to think about this. Well, let's talk about this. In Louisville, there were so many more opportunities for a small band to get to play, and a local band, and that was true for Indiana and all that kind of surrounding area there. There were huge music scenes, but there were music scenes that had a creative outlet. You had to have original music or nobody was really interested. Nobody wanted to come see a cover band. There were cover bands playing in the bars and things like that. Down here, the only way you could get a gig is play some Skinner and Travis Tritt songs or whatever, and that's the only way you could get a gig. You basically had to be a bar band. You had to do a lot of country music, and up there that wasn't necessary. Now, I've always been a firm believer that one of the reasons why, one, that music scene was so big, and two, why there were so many opportunities, was because music was everywhere and the ability to see music. You had Louisville Gardens, which used to be University of Louisville's gym. You had huge bands coming through there all the time. This is a college town with an arena. They had huge bands coming through. But you also had Tech World, a small place where you could get a $5 show. You also had Phoenix Hill Taverns, and you had Headliners Music Hall, and go across, not an hour or something away, whatever it is, hour and a half, you've got Bogarts in Cincinnati. You've got all these, you've got Riverbend Amphitheater, not really that far away. An hour and a half drive to see a concert's not that far. I believe Deer Park Amphitheater is not that far from Louisville, up in Indiana. I've been there. I just can't remember how we went and how far it was. There's so many options for live music and big bands to come through. I went and seen Soulfly and El Nino and somebody else at Headliners. Okay, if at that night that I seen Soulfly and those guys at Headliners, if Hatebreed, who had been at Tech World, was at Tech World, and you turned around and say you had, I don't know, Slipknot at Louisville Gardens, okay, and then you turn around and have Phoenix Hill Tavern has, somebody like Cold or Days of the New who's either on the end of their run or new and coming up. You could have 5-6 big shows, and that's just the metal side of that and the rock side of it. Because Phoenix Hill Taverns, I know they do all types of music. I'm not super familiar with the venue, but that's just there's other venues. There's venues downtown. There's venues for classic rock. Areas where you're only going to have classic rock and things like that. Then you had things like LRS Fest, this huge festival put on by this radio station that brought national heavy metal bands and new metal bands in, and incorporated some local flair with it. Plus you have all these festivals and shows and just there's so much opportunity to see and enjoy music, and there's I believe in a lot of ways that does two things. One, it provides an outlet and a desire and an infrastructure for there to be more local music, because the format of not even mainstream, but just big acts is there, and the accessibility is there. It makes the desire and provides motivation for people to do more with these local bands. And on top of that, one of the biggest things to me is it puts a lot of pride in those local bands. The love and admiration and just respect that people had for, I have to keep going back to MSD because that's the band that got me. These were just normal guys from Louisville, Kentucky. Worked at I think at that time, I don't know about them, but at one point they all worked at the Ford plant. They were just normal people. They were just like me, just a little bit older. And at that time, before I realized I had no musical talent, I really believed, I was able to believe I could get to where these guys are. And where these guys are is big enough for me. Filling a $5 show at Tech World is big enough for me. Doing an occasional show at Headliners is big enough for me. Like, where these guys are is enough for me. And I can see these guys and I can touch these guys, and I've been close to these guys, and I know some of their family, and we have some of the same friends, and it was accessible. And I wasn't from Louisville, but I wanted to be. I wanted to be so badly. I wanted. It was a sense of pride to me to come back and go, yeah, I was in Louisville this weekend. It really was. And it was all about music, 100%. It was cool that I got to hang out with friends that I really liked that lived there and I couldn't see every day, things like that. But a big thing was it was a musical tie-in. And so being that I wanted to be from Louisville, I think I felt something very similar to what a lot of those kids that were there at those shows with me that were from Louisville was. Pride in Louisville, pride in that music scene, but pride in MSD and a love and pride in MSD, and like it was my band. You know what I mean? Just, I assume it's the same way people feel about, I know it is, because I felt this way when I was younger about basketball, about Michael Jordan, the same way you feel about a sports team. You know, like I never understood college basketball, but right now in this moment I think about that and I understand. You know, my wife doesn't live in Lexington. She didn't go to UK, but she wanted to really badly, and UK is her favorite team, and I now for the first time in my life somewhat understand the love she has for a basketball team, because that's how I felt about MSD. That was my team. That was the people I wanted to see succeed. I wanted to see them make it. You know, I bought the CD, I bought the shirt, I bought the sticker, I went to the shows, you know. The Halloween shows were phenomenal, and it was the thing we did when we were in Louisville. And I think that music scene and the opportunities available, I think all those things mixed in like a stew, they bring up this pride and this desire to see those bands do good, but this that's your home team, this local pride, something that I even felt not being a local to Louisville, and I truly believe that's what that is, and that's where that comes from. Now the other day, a gentleman by the name of Tyler Childers released an album, and again I said Tyler's from, I believe, Eastern Kentucky, if not, you know, West Virginia, right on the border there, somewhere in that area. When you get to the coal fields, West Virginia, and Kentucky, we might as well be our own state. Nobody wants us, nobody's proud of us, and we're not treated the best ever was. So, you know, we can somewhat just, you know, consider us fellow countrymen, if you will. But Mr. Childers released an album, and he used, to my understanding, almost all Eastern Kentucky musicians. A gentleman that's done some tattoo work for me, John Haywood, is playing banjo on there, and it's a very bluegrass type thing. It's called a long history of violence, and he put out a statement about a social inequality. It was a very beautifully read and stated thing he put out. I don't want to get into what it said. Just listen to it. It was well said. Agree with it or not, that's up to you. But it was well said and I believe heartfelt. And but the important thing there is the pride that I felt. And let me preface this by saying I've listened to 90% of the available recordings that this guy's done that in my knowledge exist. I'll say 90 because there may be something out there, but if it's on iTunes, I've listened to it, and that's kind of my ability to access this guy, because it's not really my form of music, and I don't know a lot about it. Of what I've heard, again, not my type of music, and I would have to say I have loved 75-80% of what I've heard, and adore it. This album, this song, and I've not heard the whole album, this song that was not my cup of tea. But let me tell you, it is well done, well executed, and if that were my type of music, I don't think I would find any better. And I have nothing bad to say about it. You know, it's important to not, to me, it's very important to be honest and genuine. And if I sit here and go, oh man, I love this, and that's being facetious. You know, it's not my type of thing. But, you know, and not because it's bluegrass, because most of his stuff is, and I like his stuff. I'm more about lyrics and presentation, and it just, for whatever reason, but that doesn't matter. I'm still very proud of what he's done. And in regards to Sturgill Simpson from Jackson, everything of his I've heard, I've loved, and I adore what he does and how he does it, and I'm always mesmerized by songwriting and lyrics, and I'm extremely, extremely proud that he's from Eastern Kentucky. You understand? it is a big deal to me that somebody that talented come from here. And I'll go the other, Chris Stapleton. I've heard quite a bit of his stuff. I don't like any of it, not even remotely. I don't know if it's his voice. I don't know what it is that's just a combination. Not my style of music. I know a lot of people would consider him and Sturgill Simpson the same thing. I don't at all. Especially Sturgill Simpson's last album was a rock album. He just has a country voice. But I still am extremely proud of Chris Stapleton, and you know, on the level of people coming up, this Brett Taylor girl, and you know, it's I have pride in those people who come from our area and are making it and doing good. And I think that that's important, you know, to have that pride and to feel good about those people. And that doesn't happen as often in this area as it seemed to in my head as a child, you know, as a teenager back in the late 90s in Louisville. But our music scene has not been to that level that the music scene was in Louisville at that time. You know, again, you got some local bars, and I don't even know how many of those are still open. You know, I remember bands playing at the Dukes, you know, and we never played, but they had more of a country vibe. I did a podcast from there. When Duke's a Hazard Bar or something like that, you know, and done some advertising, not a podcast, I mean, a webcast. That was back when I had the web show on Ustream, Pirate Radio, that I done with my friend Tyler. But, you know, that was in the early 2000s when I was in a different band and stuff. You know, we did a battle of the bands at that point in time. But you've got some small festival stuff, and it seems to always be the same people getting those shows. There's a place in Knott called Hot Rods Pizza that was really trying to do a lot with music and bands, and you know, Nashville wanted a cut of the money every time somebody played a song in there, you know. So the opportunity's never been here, but you've got things like the Mac, and now they're using Jenny Wiley pretty heavily, and you know, you've got some musicians who have made it who are coming back and kind of putting forth some effort and some shows here and there. And I see people making, you know, my friend Hoover that I mentioned earlier, Dustin Hoover, I believe wholeheartedly he easily could have a good career just playing music. If he lived in Nashville or somewhere like that and he had went and put in the 4 or 5 years in a place like that, I could easily have seen that happen. You know, we have a gentleman named Bo Tackett who my mother worked for his father. His father was a dentist in Martin, and Bo is a guitar player for, can see his face, the guy that's on the show where they spin around in the chair of the voice show. That country musician, I can't remember his name, Blake Shelton, I believe. I'm not 100%, but you know who I'm talking about. But you know, he's on tour with guys like that. You know, there's so much local talent in Eastern Kentucky, and we don't have this opportunity to display it and have it there and have shows. We never have. We never will. And it's not just country music here. There's rock and metal and bluegrass and soul and rap and funk. I'm sure every genre is represented to some degree here. And we just don't have the outlets. Something I do feel we have really is the pride. The pride in the local musicians. And I see that a lot. And that's something we're good at in the mountains. People like to always talk about the things we're bad at in the mountains, but that's something we're good at in the mountains. Taking pride in our own people. I mean, there's people that, look, they're just negative about everything. You just got to let those people go. And look, I could sit here and go, well, I don't like this type of music and this. It doesn't matter. I'm still proud. Like, I am never going to be as talented as, say, Chris Stapleton. I'm never. And would take that talent in a heartbeat and would sing those songs in a heartbeat. Unbelievable talent. This is not my thing. But I'm proud of it. Proud to say, yeah. He's from Eastern. His dad owned the mine that used to be right behind my house where I live right now. Yes, I'm proud that he's from Eastern Kentucky. You know, so we do have that pride, and that's something that, I think we've always needed. We've always needed something to be proud of and something to look up to instead of being talked down about and things of that nature. I had always planned on doing a big deep dive. Actually, we went to record it twice. Discussion with a friend of mine, Dustin Hoover, about local music and the Marlowe Tackett days and how all that began. So that's something I'd like to work on for the future, is to sit down and kind of just, because I'm not familiar with that end of the music spectrum. I've been to Marlowe's once, maybe twice when I shouldn't have been, with somebody that listens to the show quite often. But, it was a different atmosphere here. And I wish that people from here, not for the music, you may not like the music, but I wish that people from here could go back and experience what was happening in Louisville in that music scene. And I wish those people could experience the pride we have here for these people. And I wish all of us could experience that music scene in Nashville. I can't imagine what the Nashville music scene is. I would like to experience that music scene in Los Angeles on the Sunset Strip. I would like to experience more. Man, imagine the funk, rock, and just, man, the soul and R&B and stuff from Detroit or Motown. That Muscle Shoals sound and stuff in Florida and in the South. You look at all of these different music scenes, the Northeast New York, the punk scene in New York, and I'm not a punk fan, but imagine that punk scene in New York. Imagine that, singer-songwriter scene in these bars and stuff in New York City. It's amazing to look back and think of all these different music scenes that's popped up over the years. And I wish my hometown had more of that scene. I wish there was more venues and opportunities to play. And I'll be honest with you, it's not. Some of it is due to people won't show up. You can't draw crowds and that's just kind of in our nature and our DNA. Like, I'm not particularly like that, but obviously I'm not going to go to a lot of country shows. It's not really what I do. But, even if it was rock and metal, people have tried that and you didn't have the turnout. You just don't get the turnout as often. And I don't think it's a disrespect for the artist or musician I think it's just, you get used to a lifestyle of quiet. I don't know what it is. I don't know that it's necessarily negative. Everything doesn't have to be a negative. Something I'd like to see change, and I don't know if that's possible. But if it is, it's something I'd like to see change. But these different music scenes over the years and all these different places, imagine just the desire to go and experience that just floor. It overwhelms me. Like I'd love to see that. And in different decades and different places. But imagine that music scene. Wherever Hendrix was coming out of. After the backup band days, but or even in that time when he was playing backup. Imagine when England, when you had bands like the Stones and I'm not a Beatles fan, but there's no denying the size and power of the Beatles. Imagine those local music scenes over there. I mean, it's amazing to me, And I've always looked at Eastern Kentucky and went, man, I want that music scene, and I understand there's a distinct possibility that it was there to a large degree, but just not for me. because it was a genre of music that I wasn't, country and bluegrass was much more prevalent. And I know that there was a bluegrass scene here, and there's no denying that whatsoever, and I take great pride in that. But I guess selfishly I want it to be the type of music I like, because that's what everybody wants. But the arts in this area are growing exponentially, and we are having a lot of musicians come directly out of this area. I mean, right here close to home. Not just Kentucky, it's not just somebody from Lexington or Western Kentucky. It's actually people from the mountains. So things are happening, things are growing, things are changing. But I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of those musicians, and I'm proud to say I'm from close to where Sturgill Simpson's from. I'm from close to where Tyler Childers is from, and Chris Stapleton, and Brett Taylor, and Dustin Hoover. Some that you guys may never know who Dustin Hoover is, but that I'm proud to say I'm from that area. And I've always looked at the past through rose-colored glasses, because that's kind of what we do. And I think about Louisville, and look, I still get excited thinking about a local show at Tech World on a Saturday night, going to see MSD on any day of the year. But if it was in October, I mean, this is a spookcore type band. If it's October and you're going to see MSD on a cool Saturday night, and going in Tech World, paying $5 and moshing and picking up change in the pit and throwing arms and kicking, and like it's an experience that I still can't talk about without a smile on my face. Like it's, I often get online and watch old videos from MSD shows and Tech World shows, and it's one of the best times of my life. It really, really was. And I'd like for everyone to get to experience that with the music they love in the place that they live. It's not going to happen for everybody. But when it does, take advantage of it, because it's magical. I don't know what it is about music. I don't understand it. It shouldn't be as perfect as it is. It shouldn't talk to us the way it talks to us. We shouldn't feel it the way we feel it. But it is an amazing thing. Seeing the Deftones in the House of Blues in 2000 in Myrtle Beach, that feeling of that show will never go away. It'll never leave me mentally. I could say that about Ozfest. I could say that about Slipknot. I can say that about so many different bands, and they're huge bands that everybody's heard of. But I can say that about the Halloween show in '99 with MSD, and I could say that about shows that I can't remember the dates of, in Louisville that I went to. And I can say that about the very first time I was ever in Pandemonium. I came from the mountains, from eastern Kentucky, a place where, in that time, it's not like this was the dark ages. It's not like eastern Kentucky is this awful place. But most of the country wasn't into metal and new metal, Things come and go in phases. And this new wave of new metal and metal love was just starting. So obviously it hadn't hit as hard here as it had other places at that time, it being that new. But being a kid from the mountains and going to Louisville and going in this dirty, dingy arcade, and you walk next door to, a place half the size of the arcade. It's just a small room, and you can smell the sweat, because there's so many people packed in and they're just going crazy, and you can smell the dampness of the room. It was an old leaky building, and I can still feel the texture of the drywall under my hand as I put my hands behind my back and leaned against a white wall. And I can remember the sight and the sound of all these kids, free to express themselves, free to be there, free to enjoy something that I'd never seen here. And in the sounds of these local bands, it's not a Freebird cover, and it's not a country song, one guy with an acoustic. This is a full band, and whether they're good or not is irrelevant. They're playing heavy, and they're playing fast, and they're playing mean, and they're playing with passion, and they're excited, and these kids are excited. And watching my friends from Louisville who had experienced this before just stroll into that pit and slinging their arms and fists and jumping, and the violence of that pit was scary. It scared me, but it was so tempting, and it just lured me in. And that first time in that pit, and just about getting my head kicked off by some guy, and just and coming out of that pit, my shirt stretched, and my lips swelled just a little bit, and sweating, and it just, I should have been exhausted. I should have been worn down. I should have had nothing left. But that's not the case. I felt amazing. It was like a drug. It was the greatest thing ever. Up to that point, music had been an experience and an emotion and a love and an obsession, and I associated watching music with that. But that's not it. Going to a concert is a different emotion altogether than just the music. It's two things. It's two individual things that interact together, and you add into that the pit, and it was amazing. That emotion and that experience was unexplainable. I could sit and wax poetic for hours, and I can give you nothing to compare to the actual experience itself. That experience was priceless. It was for a 16-year-old kid as near orgasmic and sexual as anything else, as the first time with a girl, as anything. It was beautiful, and it was addictive, and it is an addiction I've chased since then, and it is something that you think can never be duplicated, but ever so often. It's always good. It's always good to be at a show. It's always good to be at a show, and it's always good to see live music. But ever so often, you'll see a big band, or even a small band, a local band that takes you back a little bit. And when that comes rushing back, that feeling, it's unreal. It's unreal. And I want everyone to experience that. Everyone to experience the pride in their local musicians. Everyone to experience good music that they love. Music that speaks to them, music that means something to them. But on top of that, I want people to experience that moment when you first are introduced to something that you love to that degree. Something that you can't get every day. And I want people to be able to experience that in their own backyard. So hopefully when the whole COVID thing's over, it's back to normal, and it's back to live music, and hopefully Eastern Kentucky will flourish, and there'll be live shows everywhere. But think about that first time, if you've ever really experienced a concert. Think about that first time. See if you can think about it without smiling, without joy, without elation, without the memories just flooding back.